Every character, location, or experience you've read about in my crime fiction novels holds a piece of reality. I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to the story behind my stories, the video podcast where crime fiction meets my authentic experience. Here, we delve into the real-life inspirations and intimate stories that shaped my novels. Discover how my everyday encounters, adventures, and travels translate into tales as gripping as they are genuine. The story behind my stories goes behind the words on the page to reveal the backstory that inspires my writing. Hit follow or subscribe and ensure you're part of this journey. Hi. So, last week we left it that I'd made the decision that I was going to Thailand to set up a pony trekking business with Mug, the owner of Charm Beach and the headmaster of the local school. So that was all set. I was taking £10,000 to change into Thai baht as my contribution towards buying the horses, etc. Mug had a piece of land that was at the foothills of the jungle, and we're going to clear that piece of land and build the stables, the pony trekking ranch there. So I resigned from my job. I started putting my life in order. I had this house that I live in now, but I'd only been living here for a year at the time. So then I had to get agents in to rent it out, get it ready for renting. I put some stuff up in the loft. The rest of it I had to move over to my parents, put it up in their loft. And then I'm trying to think when they moved in here. I think it was around the November time, because I was back living at my parents for maybe a month, maybe December. And my flight out was in between Christmas and New Year to Thailand. And so I had to prepare the house, get the house rented out, and sort out everything I needed to take with me. I just had a normal flight with a normal luggage. So I remember the night before I left, I was back in my own old bedroom at home, and I'd had a few glasses of wine. It was my last night, and I hadn't packed, and I think I had to be at the airport for like 11 a.m. and I got up at 7 it must have been early afternoon. I had to be at the airport because I got up and I packed and left. And so yeah, packing was trying to get a riding hat and boots, and I had a massive stable management book I wanted to take, as well as my laptop and everything else. So I was very focused on getting together all of the things I needed for running the pony trekking. And my only side thought, I had been doing a writing course. It wasn't a novel writing course, it was an article writing course, which also was mainly non-fiction and a little bit of fiction. It was a remote course that you did, and I think I'd been doing it a couple of years earlier. But ever since, like from the first episode of The Story Behind My Stories, ever since I was very young, I had always thought I had a novel in me. I always thought I would write a novel. But I don't think it had actually filtered through into my head at that point that is what I was going to do. I just thought I'll take my laptop and then I've got that to do something while I was waiting for things to happen with the whole pony trekking thing. So yeah, I got up early that morning and I just packed shorts, t-shirt, bikini, riding gear, my laptop, and went to the airport and flew to Thailand. So again, I flew into Bangkok, and I'm trying to think. I don't think I then flew down to Koh Samui. I think I'd stopped doing that internal flight at that point, and I got the train, which was awesome. First time I went on a night train, it was great. It's almost opposite the airport. You could get a train from there to like their central station in Bangkok, and then get a train down to Suratani. And the train down to Suratani was a night train. So you had these, like on our trains, these 2 facing 2, or here they're 3 facing 3. And then at some point around 8-9 o'clock at night, these sort of stewards would come along and put your bed down and make it, and they ended up being like 2 bunks. And it was a great way to travel. It was so cheap, especially as you weren't paying for a night's accommodation because it was a night train, and comfortable, really comfortable. I slept really well on the train. The motion was consistent, and I think there was very few stops through the night, so it was just a constant, consistent sort of thing. And then when you got to Suratani, there'd be buses that would take you to the pier, and then from the pier you could get a boat over, which again was a good 4 or 5 hours. And there was a night boat as well, where you sort of just rolled out your bed and slept on the deck thing. It was a big boat, not like the ones that you cross from Koh Phangan to from Koh Samui to Koh Phangan. So then I arrived at Charm, and I think by the time I'd done that journey, it was either New Year's Eve or it was the night before New Year's Eve, and Charm was full. But obviously they knew I was coming, and so I arrived, and they didn't have the bungalow they wanted to give me at that time. So I had the one next to it, and then a few days later I moved into that one. But when I arrived, Charm was full. There were lots of people there because not only was it New Year's Eve, but there was a full moon party. So it was full of backpackers, all wanting to celebrate New Year. I believe it was 2056. something like that, was the Thai year, because they're like 120 years further on than us. I don't know. I never really sort of looked into that. It was just that rather than it being, yay, 2003, it was 2056 or something. So I remember arriving. Actually, I might have even had one of those huts out the back, like Paul's. Yes, I did. For those first 2 or 3 nights, because I remember getting bitten alive, because they didn't have these screens and things like that. But I arrived, and Piek was doing back-to-back runs to Hadrian with all the people from Charm that were going out for New Year's Eve. I'd obviously just arrived. It wasn't my thing anyway, and I just stayed at Charm. And it was funny to watch everybody over the next couple of days. They'd all come for this massive party, the New Year, and the majority of them I don't think could remember any of it. But it was a great atmosphere. It was the New Year. Everybody was in a party mood. Everybody was up for a laugh, a party, a drink, celebration. It was a very happy celebratory time, and a great time to arrive for a year in a place that a year earlier I never wanted to visit. Now I was going to live here for a year. So it took, I would say, the month of January. It's a big Thai holiday, so there was not a lot going on. But it took the month of January to settle down, to become my home. And for me to get out of I'm on holiday mode, because I wasn't on holiday. And I think it was probably a couple of weeks in when I thought, what am I going to do with my time if there's, initially there wasn't a lot of work for me to do with regards to the pony trekking, because we got started on the work of clearing the land of the trees and things. I popped down there with Mug and with Lex several times, met the guys, and I have some photos of the big diggers clearing the land and getting everything sorted. And I did that for a couple of times in January, but it was going to take some time to clear all of that space, to build any stables and everything. And talking with Mug, it was sort of planned that potentially I would go with him to the north of Thailand just before I flew home in June for time with my dad. And so those first 5 months, there wasn't a lot for me to do. So I decided I needed a routine. I needed something to do. And I had my laptop, and then I decided, right, okay, so you're here. This is the time. This is the time to write that novel. So I started. And from the course that I'd been doing, I had this structure, but I suppose it came to me quite naturally, almost from my IT job. It was a project that I had to manage, and there were certain bits you went through in order to manage a project. So I spent the first few weeks thinking of what I was going to write a novel about, and that goes back, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to The Story Behind My Stories, episode 1, because that is the reason. They're the 2 rules that I write by. One being write what you read, and I read a lot of crime fiction, and the other one was write what you know. And I spent a lot of time swinging in my hammock. What am I going to do? With the ideas going round and round in my head, and that formed, well, I'm going to be here for a year, I'm going to be writing while I'm here. Let's set it here in Thailand. And then, right, what I know, it's got to be crime fiction. So how do I do that? That's when I decided that it had to be a British detective, so that I could write another one if I wanted to, back at home or in a different location, so it couldn't be Thai. So I did my character profiles of Goodwin, who his best friend was, what had happened in his life, all of that sort of thing. And if you head over to my website and sign up for the newsletter, there will be exclusive content that will only be available to people on my website, such as the character profiles of some of the characters in my books, and a blank form that you can use yourself if you're thinking of writing a book, of the sort of questions that I asked myself about my character. And although you can go through the physical aspects and things like that, there is a lot of other stuff. So, what motivates him? Where's he come from? Why is he feeling the way he feels at the moment? And that developed into, okay, he's lost his wife. That also gives him the freedom to be coming out to Thailand. But why is he coming to Thailand? Because he was a bit like me. He doesn't have a desire to go to Thailand or Asia. So that led me to, okay, all these people around me here in Charm are backpackers that are travelling. I was 10, 15 years older than them, but he's the age that he could have a child, a daughter or a son. And then that led me around. She's travelling. He knows he's had a problem with coming to terms with his wife's death, so then he can come out to Thailand to repair his relationship with his daughter. And so then from there everything else followed. And so once I'd sort of got the timeline of the story, once I had got the characters that I needed in the story, like Alison's boyfriend, Dave, the killer, etc., had it all mapped out, good to go. So then I was very disciplined in my writing when I was there, and I also had the time to explore my writing process, which I started in that January of 2003. I started writing tie-dye, and funnily enough, I had the title in my head from the moment I thought I'm going to set it in Thailand and it's going to be crime fiction. And I do that with all of my books. I have the name set before I start writing it. I don't know why. It comes out as part of that initial timeline and basic story. So it was going to be called tie-dye. It would be a novel. It would be a crime fiction novel, and it would be set in Thailand. And that was me started. I was writing a novel. And next week I will tell you what my process was from then, and also the backstory of the pony trekking into the jungle and where we got to with that, and take it from there. So I will talk to you next week.